services reductions. I'm not sure how we ended up from a resolution that states that materials and supplies budget be reduced by the following amounts. HSS, $70,000. And now it's being moved over to Norview. If you look up further, Norview was specifically targeted in resolution number 50. So I'm not sure why we're bouncing it across divisions. We never asked to take any of this out of Norview, and I know my colleague, Councillor Oliver, and I agree with him, the local food initiative shouldn't be removed. And that's not where it was meant to be removed. It says specifically in our resolutions where it should come from. I don't believe we left options open in there. We didn't say, please remove this amount or not. So can somebody ask me how all these figures got moved around from our original budget numbers?
Go ahead.
Through the chair to Councillor Height, we actually didn't move anything around. Part of health and social service budget does include Norview, and we looked at the materials and supplies. We specifically looked at those for social services and Norview, excluding public health, which is a separate budget line, which we have dealt with under the Board of Health. So we did not actually make any changes. It was very specific out of materials and supplies, and this is where we had come up with the $70,000 specific. The other specific areas were targeted as per the report.
Well, when I read the budget book, Norview has its own section. This wasn't coming out of that section. It was coming out of the HS and S section, which did not include Norview because Norview has its own spot. I know it's next to impossible to get a cutout of Norview. No way I'm barking up that tree. I've done that 2 years in a row and failed. So that's not where it was meant to come out of.
Go ahead. Mr. Ford, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, I'm looking for the specific resolution, but I believe what it said is that an amount of $70,000 be reduced from health and social services, materials and supplies. As Ms. Miranda has said, health and social services includes Norview. There was no direction saying that $70,000 be taken out of health and social services except for Norview, or health and social services health only, or social housing, or social services. It was the health and social services department. And the health and social services department gave us the list that you see there in the report that totals up to $70,000. So I would submit that the staff hasn't done anything contrary to what Council's direction was. Council's direction was very clear. Take $70,000 out of supplies and materials for health and social services.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I appreciate my colleagues' concern, but my motion was very specific, and that was my amendment, rather, was just to deal with putting that $20,000 back into the local food budget and taking the $20,000 out of their levy-funded capital. And I appreciate his concerns, and he's raising a bigger question than what my amendment was. That's all I'm saying.
Okay.
And I don't know whether staff support it or whether either Ms. Miranda or Bill would comment, but that was my hope.
Go ahead.
Through the chair to Councillor Oliver, staff have discussed this with Councillor Oliver, and we are confident that we could take it out of the levy capital if so directed by council and reinstate the $20,000 into the local food out of materials and supplies, but we would need that direction. Thank you.
Mayor Luke?
I was going to ask that question on the amendment. I have another comment, but I'll wait till we get back to the motion.
Okay. Anything further? If not, the motion is?
Through the chair to committee that report FS 17-16 final 2017 budget adjustments be received as information, and that the $20,000 proposed to be removed from the Norview local food purchases budget as part of materials and supplies reductions, resolution number 52, January 30th, 2017, not be taken from this budget and instead be removed from the 2017 levy-funded capital for Norview.
Is that correct? Further questions? Councillor Brunton.
Speaking to the motion, what is levy capital? What are we talking about?
Through the chair to Councillor Brunton, Mr. Nolan's looked at the capital, and it's actually a deferral for some carpet replacements, and that would be the specific project that we would refer from 2017 into 2018.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor Luke, did you have something
Are
you
we
want to add?
dealing with the amendment or the motion? I'm confused. I shouldn't be, but I am.
I think what we're doing is taking the motion and making an amendment to it. That's basically.
So it's all one motion.
I would
And then I will
suspect that that's the case, yes.
Okay, I didn't realize that. Now I'm straight. I would like to speak to Mr. Chair. This is a discussion we had at budget time briefly, and I do have some difficulty sometimes with saying at the end of a budget session, look, we're not where we want to be. We've been at this 4 days as council, so let's just turn this over to staff and let them do their thing. They know what's best for their departments and where best to make the choices. And when I support that, I think that I'm saying go and do what you want, but we also know that when that's done, if it's something that affects your ward, let's say, or something that's near and dear to your heart, that it's going to raise some concern. And certainly Councillor Oliver and anybody else has the absolute right to look at this report, because the direction was to bring back specifically their cuts. But I have to be honest with you, for the most part, when we turn it over to staff, because we no longer want to make those decisions, or we were getting tired of it, or whatever the reason, I trust staff that they know how to run their respective divisions and budgets. So it's sometimes it's tough to say, go ahead and make the cuts, we trust you, and then turn around and start. Thank you.
Councillor Height.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a question for clarification. Once this, if we do the motion with the amendment and it goes through, we no longer discuss this report? Would that be correct?
I would suggest that, yes.
Okay, well, I'm looking to amend it then, because I don't agree with the very last option. When we asked staff to come back for a $250,000 reduction, I was hoping that we would have come back with some options. What we have before us is one option. Okay, and that option is to extend the water, or the garbage collection costs, or the fire protection, leachate treatment, and solid waste costs. That's going to extend it an extra year. That's not reducing operating costs. That is kicking the can down the road. I know that when I voted for that extra reduction, I was looking for more of an expense in the operating side reduction as opposed to, right, kicking a debt down the road. I didn't agree with the debt in the first place by doing that, and so I'm certainly not going to do that now. So I'd like to make the amendment that, and I would prefer that staff come back giving us options, not just one option here. If there are other ways that we can reduce that, and I'm looking specifically at operating.
So what are you suggesting, that this go back to?
That last part, where it says here, the initial adjustment to meet objective, $250,000. I'm just looking for the actual resolution that did that.
I can help, Mr. Chairman. It's resolution number 64, and I'll read it. It says, quote, that the budget be referred back to staff with direction to bring back a budget with a 2.1% net residential levy increase or lower carried.
Yes. And this gives me one option. I don't agree with that option, and I'd like it pulled out so that we can actually vote on it separately then. I think we could have found some other options in there to reduce that money. right? This is a phase-in. Instead of a 3-year phase-in, it's now a 4-year phase-in. That's not what I was looking for.
Well, you have to put something on the floor, I guess, to deal with. I don't know how we're going to deal with it. I have Councillor Wells, and then I can get back to you. Is that okay?
Okay.
I'm trying to understand this, Mr. Chair, that staff indicate a further reduction of $250,000 and the net levy would be required. And have they done that? So they have completed what we have asked them to do. And if I understand Councillor Height correctly, he's not objecting to the fact that they found $250,000 or $225,000, whatever it is. He's objecting to where they found it. Am I correct on that?
That's correct.
But we didn't, and I guess the learning of this is next time maybe we have to be more careful, but they have done what we've asked them to do, and I would have difficulty not accepting the job and the task that we have given them to do. But as I said, next time, if we want to specifically say and bring it back before they make the final, then fine.
Yes. Councillor Height?
Further to my colleague's comments, I suppose they could have did nothing, extend our debt out further 1 year, and we could have been at a 0% increase. Why not push it to 40-year debt instead, and give all of our departments the interest-free payment in their departments? When I remember going through this, I was looking for more of a reduction coming back from staff in the operating side of it, not in the payment side of it. All we're doing here is we're extending the life of a debt 1 other year to come under budget. That means next year there's a cumulative effect on this. We're not going to see any savings next year unless we extend it out 5 years. We're not addressing the operating costs.
Councillor Wells?
Well, Mr. Chair, again, if it was the intent of Councillor Height or anyone else to take the money from the operating budget, they should have specifically indicated that in the motion. But we gave it to staff saying, find it, which they have, and that's where they have chosen to take it from. I guess the lesson learned here is maybe we have to be more careful, Mr. Chair, in our motions.
Councillor Brunton?
Bottom line is, staff are smarter than us. They found a better way to do it. Thank you.
So theoretically, I guess...
I object to that. I don't think staff is smarter than us. I think they have done the job that we have asked them to do.
I guess the only way to handle this, and I'm not sure that this is correct or not, but how about putting your motion on the floor and saying that it has to come from somewhere else, and we will see what the council decides. Is that the fairest way to do this, I guess? And I don't know whether I am in order or not.
Yes, Mr. Chair, really I just want to see some options on that particular item. And yeah, clearly, obviously, it's clearly my fault. We weren't clear enough that day in providing staff direction, and that won't happen again. I guarantee that. But moving ahead, I would like to see some options, as opposed to moving of the debt.
And we'll see what council decides. I guess that's all I can tell you, Councillor Height.
Sir?
I said that's the only thing. Put your motion on the floor that come from wherever you're suggesting that it come out of. Sorry, can you tell us that again? Exactly what you're looking for?
Well, there's already a motion and there's an amendment, so I have to propose another amendment.
Propose another amendment. That is correct.
Am I able to make an amendment that staff be directed to come back with another report saying where we could find this extra $250,000 out of the operating costs, excluding interest and debt payments?
Typing that up, and we will. I guess I don't know how to deal with it, and that's the best way. The best way that we can is deal with the options that we have. So, and I think we already have approved one, if I'm not mistaken. Just give us a minute here. Go ahead.
Thank you. Through the chair to committee, that report FS 1716 final 2017 budget adjustments be received as information, and that the $20,000 proposed to be removed from the Norview local food purchases budget as part of materials and supplies reductions, resolution number 52, January 30th, 2017, not be taken from this budget and instead be removed from the 2017 levy funded capital for Norview. And a further amendment that staff be directed to report back with options to find $250,000 worth of savings in operating costs.
I think we have to deal with those separately. Did we not deal with one? So I would suggest that we deal with Councillor Oliver's first, and then we'll deal with Heights, if that's okay. And then we'll deal with the main motion to solve that problem if we can. Any argument? Okay. So again, the first one, we have two separate amendments, which deals with, we've taken it from, again, go ahead. I haven't got in front of me.
Sure. Moved by Councillor Oliver, and that the $20,000 proposed to be removed from the Norview local food purchases budget as part of materials and supplies reductions, resolution number 52, January 30th, 2017, not be taken from this budget and instead be removed from 2017 levy funded capital for Norview.
All those in favor? That is carried. Moving on to the next one.
Moved by Councillor Height, that staff be directed to report back with options to find $250,000 worth of savings in operating costs.
Go ahead.
Instead of the adjustment to phase in, or the phase-in period for the contributions from various reserves and reserve funds for fire protection, leachate treatment, and solid waste costs.
Where are you putting this forward now?
But that should be on to the end of it, because it's asking for a $250 reduction from operating costs, and we should probably break out what the one option that's before us today.
Go ahead. John?
Mr. Chairman, not that I'm going to argue about what Councillor Height said. That would be the last thing I'd want to do. But the number has got to be more than $250,000. It needs to be more like 200, and I got to find the number. $296,000. And the reason it's $296,000 is explained on page 3 of the report. That's because some of the change, some of the reduction in some of the other areas, because there's funding from the province or funding from Haldimand County, some of the numbers have to be adjusted. And because of the fact that the library was instructed to do, I'm sorry, not instructed, was asked to make a reduction, but they came in with a lower reduction. So all of that loaded on to the 250 grand to stay with the direction from council that the residential tax levy increase remain at 2.1%. So we have to, that number is really 296,000, not 250.
Okay, go ahead.
We can just word it to be the 2.1% to keep it down to that number. If that would work. That's why this report's so messy. There's 4 different financial things in it, and it's all going to get under one motion or with a bunch of amendments. And really, we've already provided direction ahead of time on some of these. Now we're reconsidering them.
Councillor Brunton.
I'm kind of lost, but I'm going to ask Mr. Ford.
Too, as well.
I'm going to ask Mr. Ford a question. You said 296,000, John? Okay, so if we do what Councillor Height wants, he raised a good point. Again, I think staff are smarter than us, unfortunately. But anyways, you're saying we have to cut out $296,000 out of operating then? Is that what you're saying, to meet that requirement? If we don't go along with his proposal?
No.
If we did it the other way around is what I'm saying. Do you understand that or no?
Yes, I understand exactly what you're saying. What I'm saying is that the resolution that was passed during budget was that staff bring back a budget with a 2.1% increase. Okay?
Right.
And at the time we were talking about to achieve that required $250,000 more than we had deducted, than council had deducted up to that point.
Right.
Okay? However, in the flurry of activity on the last day, one of the things that wasn't taken into consideration, because council didn't ask staff to respond to any of the proposed changes, is that the $70,000 reduction in Health and Social Services Department for supplies and materials is really $70,000 less 24 grand. Because some of it is subsidized and so on and so forth. So had staff been afforded the opportunity to discuss that during the budget review, we would have said the 70,000 is only really 56,000. You follow what I'm saying?
All right.
So in order to get to the 2.1%, we don't require an adjustment of 250 grand. We need 296 grand. If this resolution had have said, moved by Councillor Wells, that the staff find $250,000, then we'd be sitting here discussing something where the tax increase was 2.3 or 2.4%. But the resolution was very clear, do what you need to do to bring a 2.1% increase. To do that, this last adjustment has to be 296,000, not 250,000.
Okay. I get it. Thank you. Thank you.
So where are we on this now? Are we just simply going to let staff do the changes that you would like? I don't know how to deal with this one. This is something for me. Go ahead. Yeah, he had a motion, but he wants to now amend the motion because he wants to tell us where it's got to come from. Correct? Am I understanding that right?
It sounds that way. Maybe the clerk could comment, because like we have it in here that we need a reduction down to 2.1%. So unless we undo that, this report can't move ahead, because this effectively undoes that. So would we not have to vote to reconsider it? Or
I don't think so. Go ahead.
Thank you. Through the chair. So this report would bring significantly new information to you.
I'd say because they're not following the resolutions.
So with that, through the chair, you wouldn't be required to have a reconsideration.
What do you have for the motion right now?
Through the chair, that staff be directed to report back with options to find 2.1% savings in operating costs instead of the fire protection, leachate treatment, and solid waste costs.
Is a report? You had staff report?
That's correct. Report back.
Okay, I'm good with that. Then it'll be a report that comes back with options. That's what I'm looking for.
I know, I got you. Okay, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, I don't think that resolution works, because it's saying that that staff come back with a 2.1% reduction. That's not, I don't think, what Councillor Height wants. I think what Councillor Height is looking for is that staff come back with alternatives for the $296,000 adjustment that staff had made to get to the 2.1%. Okay? I think that's what Councillor Height's after. The 2.1% is what Council directed staff to do. That's been done. In doing that, we took $296,000 as a deferral of those things that are listed as item number 4. There's no need for Council to approve item number 4 in here. They've already done that effectively. What Councillor Height is saying is, I don't agree with the way staff did it. I want staff to come back with some other options. Is that fair?
Yes, sir. That's exactly right.
Yeah. Staff come back with recommendations for the $296,000 reduction, not that staff come back with recommendations for a 2.1% reduction, because if you say that, then the whole budget gets thrown out.
Yeah, and the reason why I'm after this is because this is something that will carry over into the next year. This is just a one-time thing by reducing a debt payment. It's not actually looking at reducing the operating costs, and I believe that that's what this council wanted, was to keep us down to a 2.1% increase. And we're going to just turn around, and next year we'll be looking for $500,000 because that's what our true operating costs call for.
Okay, I'll have the clerk read the motion that she has, and then we'll vote on that as an amendment.
Thank you. Through the chair to committee, and John, I hope I have this correct, that staff be directed to report back with options to find adjustments to the $296,000 savings in operating costs instead of the fire protection, leachate treatment, and solid waste costs.
Go ahead. All right.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, what we're doing, and I can appreciate Councillor Height's idea here. We are adding to next year's budget already because we are deferring it. We're not taking it away, we are deferring it. Plain and simple. Thank you.
Questions? If not, all those in favor? Those opposed? The motion is defeated. So now we'll move with the main motion. Questions or anything from that? I think we've dealt with Councillor Oliver's. Maybe I'll get you to read that, Councillor Oliver's, and I guess what the staff report was when we got this. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. Through the chair, that report FS 1716, final 2017 budget adjustments be received as information, and that the $20,000 proposed to be removed from the Norview local food purchases budget as part of materials and supplies reductions not be taken from this budget and instead be removed from 2017 levy funded capital for Norview, which was carried. And moved by Councillor Height, the staff be directed to report back with options to find adjustments to the $296,000 savings in operating costs instead of fire protection, leachate treatment, and solid waste costs, which was defeated.
So it's just the first part of that we're going to be voting on. Does anybody understand what we're doing? And so I think I understand that Councillor Height's motion was deleted, or defeated, I should say, and now we're going back to where we were, and I'm assuming that Council will pass whatever there is. Go ahead.
We've already passed Councillor Oliver's motion, so what's left?
Nothing,
this
then, I guess
should be done.
passed.
Are we done?
I think we're done.
I think we're done.
Okay, I hope we're done. Just want to make sure that we have everything covered that we need to cover. Sorry to say that. Okay. Be received that. Well, I thought that was the mayor, the clerk had that, and basically what the recommendation is now, that staff report FS 1715 assessment-based management. Oh, that's the wrong one. Sorry, I got to get to the right place. Just hang on. Page 26. There we go. The only recommendation is that staff report FS 1716, final 2007 budget adjustment, be received as information. And then what we passed with Councillor Oliver's motion. Go ahead. As amended, yes. Can you add that as amended? And we'll vote on the whole thing. All those in favor? That is carried. Moving on to page, sorry, I guess it's communications. The rest of the, that's all we have left. It's a communication from Clark Hoskins, Manager, Tourism and Economic Development, Impact Assessment Update, Farm Tax Ratios, pulled for discussion. Councillor Height. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In this memo, it talks about our AG committee, and they're looking for council to support the idea of sending this back to them so that they could either come up with some issues and options or how things are moving along in other municipalities or something like that. I think it's pretty important right now that we look at some of our farm properties and the values that they're holding, because sure, when your house goes up in value, that's great, especially if you're either selling it or you need the money to borrow against it. That's not so great if you're growing a cash crop on a farm and, well, the prices of those crops haven't gone up at all. So you're paying more and more for taxes. At some point, I think it's going to become a real challenge for farmers out there to pay for those land taxes. And really what I'm asking this council to do is support the option of sending this back to our AG committee, which has been very good at bringing us information and to see what options there are out there for the farming community. And I guess my motion would be just to move it to them and have them come back with the stuff, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Councillor Black.
I didn't support it before. I won't support it now. If you're going to do anything with adjusting rates and assessments, it's like, to be fair, you've got to do the whole system. The whole system is based on market value. And all of a sudden, you're going to pick one sector and tinker around with that. Well, let's start tinkering around with commercial that pays 2.7 more than the residential, where agriculture is paying only 0.25, which in fact works out, according to Mr. Ford, a $12 million subsidy to the farming community already by the people in Norfolk County. Absolutely not.
Further? Councillor Columbus.
Yes, I have sat with the Ag Advisory Board, and it has come up for discussion. I know this came before council several years ago, and the NFA, Norfolk Federation of Agriculture, was actually asked the council to look at it. Since that time, we all know that land is selling for $20,000 an acre, and that's why the assessments are so high, because of what a farmer is willing to pay for farmland in Norfolk. But I'd like to ask Mr. Ford if he can share some knowledge, or Mr. Johnson, as to what's happening in other municipalities with respect to this. I know there's been talk about it, and have other municipalities dropped their ratios?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, some municipalities already have a lower rate. Not very many of them, but they do. And as far as the 2017 tax ratios are concerned, those reports typically come to councils in May and June. So there hasn't been a lot of activity around in Ontario municipalities so far this year in terms of what they're doing with their tax ratios. A lot of municipalities are still trying to get their 2017 budgets approved. So I think you'll see reports starting to filter into councils, maybe the middle to the end of May, because those tax ratios then affect the final tax billing that goes out in the latter part of June. Our report is typically comes to council sometime the latter part of May, maybe the first CIC meeting in June, but usually we try to get it near the end of May. And that's when this report will come forward with the complete analysis of what the impacts could be or might be. But I do have a question about Councillor Height's resolution that I'll hold for a second, but that's just an answer to Councillor Columbus.
So what I understand you're saying is you're going to be preparing a report for council with respect to this proposal?
Yes, we prepare a report every year to council regarding tax ratios. That's a requirement under the Municipal Act. And the last time that this assessment review changed was in 2012. And at that time, we presented a report giving that kind of analysis about what the impacts were of all the different classes and the changes and et cetera. Every year we give council a report on what the recommendation is for tax ratios, but we don't do that analysis every year, because once it's been done after an assessment update, it stays relatively the same for the 4 years. There was an assessment update done last year for this year's taxes, so we will have a second report coming to council. Let's call it an impact analysis, for want of a better word, and a report on tax ratios. And they'll both be coming in May.
further from anyone? Are you making a motion to go to the Ag Advisory Board?
Sam, Mr. Chair, I hope we can coincide it maybe with Mr. Ford's report. Basically, what they're asking us to do here is to send it back to them so they can discuss the issue further and provide recommendations. If we could time it out with our treasurer's report for the taxes, I think it's worth listening to. So I'll make that a motion.
Okay, we're typing that up as we speak.
Yeah.
Further from anyone?
Mr. Chairman, could I just get a clarification on what Councillor Height's motion is? So you want to, this is just a set of minutes from the Ag Advisory Committee. You want to refer it to them so they can come up with a report on what the tax ratio should be?
No, I don't. I want to refer it back to them so that the AAB can discuss the issue further and provide recommendations. I believe your department handles the ratios. They may come back with a report asking you to change that ratio, but I'm just looking for the recommendations from them.
Okay, that's I'm a little confused because the AAB, I don't think that they have the information or the capacity to do that analysis. But if you want to refer it to them, that's fine. I don't think they have the capacity of the analysis to do that. They've talked to, according to this email, or this set of minutes, information package memo, I'm sorry, that the chair of AAB has met with the Ontario Federation of Agriculture. They have nothing to do with assessment. MPAC has to deal with assessment, and we're the ones that do the analysis. So I'm a little confused as to why it'd be referred to the AAB for their input. But if that's what council wants to do, certainly that can be done. But it's certainly not going to influence what our report is. Our report's going to just give you the statistical analysis and the impact.
Councillor Columbus.
I believe that this will be on a future agenda item for the 1 or 2 AAB meetings away. It was just, it has been discussed, and I think there was going to be more work put into it. Well, I don't know. There's some people really looking into this at the AAB. So.
Okay. Do you have a motion to that effect?
Through the chair to committee, moved by Councillor Height, that committee supports the option of referring the topic of MPAC assessments update farm tax ratio to the Agriculture Advisory Board for review and recommendations.
Any further questions? All those in favor? Those opposed? That is defeated. That's the end of it. Thank you very much. Have a good trip home. Oh, we got other business. Sorry. Oh, God. Sorry. Okay, other business, starting with Councillor Oliver.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have 2 quick items. First of all, I've put on members' desks. Mayor Luke and I were at the annual meeting of SCORE last Thursday, I think it was Thursday, and just providing you with a copy of their annual report. And Mr. Chair, the other thing I'd like to bring up, and obviously we may not be able to resolve this evening, but it's a similar thing to what we talked about a few minutes ago with respect to the one item in the $70,000 reduction in materials and supplies. Council had provided direction to do Development and Cultural Services to reduce their budget, and inadvertently part of that reduction was to the Youth Engagement Initiative. And Mr. Hoskin provided us all with a memo last Friday about this, sort of pointing out to us that that's what has happened as a result of our direction back at the budget meeting. And so, Mr. Chair, it's my hope, and I don't know whether we could deal with it this evening or next week, but I'd like to see the $8,700, which has proposed to be removed from the Youth Engagement Initiative as part of those budget cuts, to be found elsewhere within the Development and Cultural Services budget. That money attracts money from other corporate sponsors in the community. We all know how successful that initiative was in 2016. And I believe we all feel it would be a shame if that was basically gutted from our program this year. So I don't know whether you'll entertain it as a motion. I know the clerk was going to give me some direction as to whether this would require reconsideration or not, but I'm raising it as an issue this evening.
Okay. Mayor Luke.
Well, anything we decide on at budget time or any other time of the year is up for someone to say, let's have another look at it. I don't know. I think that council made a decision on that. And if that's true, then our procedure is a reconsideration. And I know you can call it red tape, but if we're going to just take a decision that was made 3 months ago by the majority council and just make a motion that we reverse it, I don't think I want to start running things that way. 2/3 of council can, as long as a year hasn't gone by, can reconsider anything. So either we're going to follow that, in my opinion, or let's get rid of the reconsideration, and every week we can challenge decisions that are made anytime. I don't know. I think it's a reconsideration personally, and if that's in order, then I'm certainly with you, Councillor Oliver, but let's make sure we do it properly.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll certainly take direction from the mayor on this, and and I think the clerk was saying the same thing, although I don't have it in writing from him yet. So, with permission, I'll try and get a motion for reconsideration up next week at council.
For next week? Okay.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you very much.
Anything else? Councillor Columbus.
Mr. Chairman, tonight I've heard the word "I'm confused" used several times.
Yes.
And I am confused about one thing too. Ms. Robinson's not here. It's about the connecting link funding. Are we getting money for Queensway?
Just hang on. Okay. We have the treasurer over here to answer the question.
I got to tell you, this has been the most confusing piece of correspondence back and forth that I've seen in my recent career. We get a letter from the Minister of Transportation saying the connecting link application for Queensway West has been approved. The same day I got a letter from the regional manager saying your connecting link application has not been approved. So the letter from the Minister, Del Duca, came to Council in the Council Information Agenda, and I sent Council a copy of the letter that I got from the Western Region Manager of the Ministry of Transportation. So you've got the Minister and the Regional Director both sending different letters. So I was a little confused, obviously, and I contacted the Regional Manager and was advised that, and don't shoot me, I'm only the messenger, that the letter that they sent saying our connecting link application was not approved is a form letter that they send out, and they're not allowed to make any changes to it. Technically what happened was we submitted an application with 2 projects. One project was approved, one wasn't. Their instruction, again, don't shoot me, their instruction is, this is the form letter you send out. Your application hasn't been approved. Then I get an email saying, accept that. The Queensway West project's been approved. So I said specifically, is the Queensway West project approved? And the answer is yes, the Queensway West project is approved, but the project on James Street in Delhi is not. I asked, why can't you put that in the letter? Well, that's because it's a form letter, and they're not allowed to make amendments to it. So the answer, Councillor Columbus, is yes, we've got an approval for $826,000.
Okay, that's good news. Now we just got to get this Delhi Street connected.
Further, Councillor Columbus? That's it? Mayor Luke?
Two very quick items. We got an email, I think it was this week. I get lose track of time tonight. It might have been Friday or yesterday. Anyhow, as you know, Mr. Enslin sent council an email saying that 3 letters had been sent out to publishing newspaper companies about throwing newspapers into ditches, onto driveways, onto front lawns, when in fact they should not be there. My phone continues to ring about this item and asking, well, if this doesn't work, sending out letters, what's the next step? And I said, I don't know. That'll have to be something we further pursue. But I did want to bring that up, that we're certainly aware of the issue. Secondly, last Wednesday morning, no, actually it was Tuesday, a week ago, this morning I attended the Norfolk Ginseng Association's AGM in Delhi. It was a good morning with those folks and a big turnout. I did take a moment and talk to Ryan Kixey. As you know, he has a contract with this county with the ginseng that's planted at the back of the soccer, and I asked him how things were going, and he said very well. And I said, from this end, I think we've been okay. And I asked him when he expected to harvest. There was a possibility it would be this fall, but it will be 2018. So any councillors get a question, or staff from the soccer people or the public, he said it will not be ready, but it will definitely be harvested. And that is per the contract. So I wanted to pass that along because from time to time we bump into people asking that question. And that's all I have. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And despite what Councillor Columbus is insinuating, you're doing a good job.
Oh, thank you. Councillor Height.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm glad to see our head planner is in here today because I was at the Conservation Ontario meeting, when was that, yesterday? And they had talked, there was an update on the excess soil and large-scale fill. And I guess there was some talk over there about some of the issues that certain municipalities are having with large fill projects where people are dumping contaminated soil on a site that's clean. And they're turning around and they're spreading it out and giving it back to people. So certain contractors are, and I know some of the other mayors and councillors that were there were saying that, you know, do we have or make sure you have a bylaw when it comes to fill, and I'm just wondering if we do have said bylaw on handling that.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'm not sure that we do. I know that our neighboring municipality, Haldimand County, is looking into that, and I can look into it and get back to you.
That would be great because they assured us it would save us a lot of trouble in the future if we don't have, or if we do put one in. And then the second thing I wanted to report was, obviously, like I had to drive into the city, and I almost wish it was snowing. The ditches on the highway were just filthy. I cannot believe the amount of litter on the road. It was disgusting. Literally, it's just, are we nothing but pigs in Ontario where we just throw everything out the windows? It was unreal. Literally, the ditches are covered just from one end to the other. I was so disappointed, and I was glad to see in Norfolk County. I drove down 24, and it wasn't that bad. And, you know, and I want to thank the group from Long Point. They were out over the weekend, and a bunch of volunteers walked down the beach to pick it up and to keep it clean. But it's just unreal sometimes what people throw out. Like, I guess they just don't understand that we pay millions for garbage disposal. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I have in front of me here a letter from Prince Edmund that says, in response to the enormous complaints being received, please find attached copies of the warning letter sent to each of the newspapers, flyers, companies, Simcoe Reformer, Lakeshore Shopper, Norfolk News, response for their distribution. This is a similar letter sent them back in 2015, so I'm not sure what's going to happen. But I think there may be some, if they're going to continue, that there may be some charges as far as littering. Go ahead, Councillor Oliver.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Back on Councillor Height's first item about what Conservation Ontario was talking about, it made me think, I've noticed, and I don't know if Councillor Sonnenberg noticed this, but I noticed for a period of weeks almost, I think there were large trucks going in and out at the Waterford Fish and Game Club location on Highway 24, and you see a lot of mud on the road and stuff. And I wondered what that was about and whether or not that was fill being brought in or fill being removed. And, pardon? Yeah, and it's not anything that we have any jurisdiction over, Mr. Chairman, here, but it now does make me slightly curious as to what was going on there, and I don't know whether anyone can look into it for us, or Councillor Sonnenberg.
Councillor Sonnenberg?
I happened to be going down New 24 that day, and I wondered where all the gravel trucks were going. They went by up by Scotland. And I followed them down the road, and they turned into the gun club. And I wondered what they're hauling all that gravel in there for. I never did find out. I thought maybe they're building a parking lot or what they're doing. But that's where they were all going. But what it was, I don't know. I just assumed it was gravel.
Councillor Sonnenberg.
Well, I just want to make another comment on what we dealt with here tonight, and that's the consideration of the hub. People are going to be dancing in the streets tonight and tomorrow that council approved this hub construction, when in essence we are light years away from seeing this come to fruition. When I just assumed that this one-third was a done deal. Now we find out that there's money not available. I really starting to have reservations now. Where's this money going to come from when we have bridges to fix and roads to build and sewage treatment plants and all the other stuff on our agenda? I don't know where this money's coming from. So I don't want to be a pessimist, but boy, oh boy, the longer I sit here tonight, I'm wondering where this is headed. Thank you.
Councillor Wells.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I see Ms. Robinson's not here tonight, but I'm sure Mr. Benacker will carry the message to her. For some strange reason that I'm not quite sure, maybe it's because of the location, but in Dover lately, I have had quite a number of calls with regard to us flushing fire hydrants, specifically up by the cemetery and the Port Dover Cemetery. It's at the end, and we are in the water. It's as you drive by on Highway 6, the water collects there. We see our truck there, and people are wondering what the name of heavens we are doing. Are we creating a flood there or not? And so that's one thing. And the other thing is people who are operating the Port Dover Cemetery, we have taken out the water tap that was in there. They want to know if that's going to be replaced. And I promised them last week that I would ask, and I forgot. So even though Ms. Robinson is not here this week, I'm sure they are listening, and we will get the answer next week. And the other question they asked, again, about this water, and again, it's noticeable now, they want to know why is it necessary that we always have two workers, because they don't always have to be men, but two workers flushing these fire hydrants. I mean, well, I like that. Ms. Robinson will answer that. It'll be on TV, and they will listen, and they can get the answer. And this is Ripley's, believe it or not, this is another one. I had an email today, and they wanted to complain about their water billing. We're still having problems with this new company that we hired. And they were quite taken back by this. Their basic water charge was $21.33. Their water usage was 45 cents. The basic wastewater charge was $24.95, and the wastewater usage charge was 53 cents. So they got a bill for $47.26. And of that $47.26, they actually used 86 cents worth of water. Now, I know Ms. Robinson will be able to explain that. I said to them, I'll get you an answer. If she's not here, they'll be listening, so next week, if Mr. Benacker would tell her those things so that she'll come prepared. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas, yeah. Councillor Black.
Chairman, thank you very much, and through you to Sean. Just when you're done there, I do have a question. I would like to thank Mr. Ford for clarifying the $825,000. I did email Mr. Ford, and he was dumbfounded as well. So it's nice that we got that cleared up, and that we do have $825,000. And Sean, do you have any idea? Is it from Norfolk Street all the way out to to Norview, or how far, do you know how far that extends? Well, let me put it this way. Do you know if it extends past the old railway tracks, the bend?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Councillor Luke. The connecting link goes out to Luscombe, and but I'm not sure if that is the extent of engineering's proposal for what they plan on doing with Queensway.
Okay.
So I guess I can't answer your question here tonight, but I can find out that information through the
Okay,
engineering
well,
division.
and while you're at it, what I'm concerned about is, and for years, and I can remember, I think back maybe in town of Simcoe days, and Councillor Brunton was running the road show there, we were looking at putting 4 lanes at that bend, because we've got 4 lanes, and then all of a sudden it goes down to 2 lanes at that bend where the old railway track, and it comes out and it goes back into like this suicide lane. So while we're doing this, I'm wondering if any improvements to that bend, and we did have that one accident there that resulted in a death. Somebody that I went to school with, actually, and make that a lot safer. And sidewalks. We got a sidewalk budget. I'd like to know, is all of this going to be done together, or is it just going to be paving, or, you know, and we do have some money in the sidewalk. I'd like to know what the configuration will look like where the sidewalk will, what side of the road it will go on. You know, just exactly what the configuration of the sidewalks will be, and eventually will it link up to the one that goes all the way out to Norview. So if you can get back to I guess all of us later.
Actually, Mr. Ford may have an answer for you.
Okay.
I've got the application in front of me here now, Mr. Chairman. The project description is resurfacing of the road surface, approximately 2 kilometers, and line painting. And the area covered is Queensway West from Norfolk Street north to 60 meters west of Frederick Hobson Drive. Okay, I think that's the extent of the connecting link. Right. That's what the application is, and that's what was approved. And the gross cost is just a little over $1 million.
Councillor Brunton.
Quickly, I attended a meeting a couple of weeks back on the, and it's called the Harm Reduction Community Partners Group, and it's through the Health Board Advisory or whatever. It's through Marlene's department anyways, and it's kind of a last minute thing, but it's all it's a very interesting group, and they will be coming to this council, correct me if I'm wrong, Marlene, I think, or to the Health Board, May 18th, 23rd?
Through the chair, that's correct. To the next Board of Health meeting, they will be presenting and providing further information on the strategies for our local harm reduction.
Yeah, it's to deal with our problems with medication in the downtown. Anyways, my concern, and I guess through you to Pam, is the report that Chris is doing on the meth clinics. When is there a date for that to come back?
Through you, the chair, we're just finishing drafting it now, and it should be before council shortly. That's for the interim control bylaw.
Okay, thank you very much. And the last thing, yesterday, Mayor Luke and myself and Marlene and a few other staff members attended the new health standards issue in Hamilton, Marlene, and
Yeah, through the chair to Councillor Brunton, yes, the modernization standards, there was a consultative session with the Ministry of Health with all of the team there that provided for feedback, so then we can further provide our input from a local perspective, which is now due April the 21st.
Right. Just a quick comment. The thing that encouraged me at the meeting was it looks like we might get some flexibility in the handling of the province's money, but I guess that remains to be seen. Anyways. it'll come at a later
Yeah.
date?
So through the chair, that was actually confirmed by Rosella Martina, the Assistant Deputy Minister, that transferability of the budget will be provided to the local health units. So we won't be restricted to the silos of budgeting that we've had in the past or currently have. So we'll await that formal announcement, but that was very reassuring yesterday from the consultation.
Yes. And on another note, there was nobody there from Haldeman.
Through the chair to Councillor Brunton, we had received acceptance of RSVPs, if I may, from the board chair, Councillor Del Monte and Councillor Corbett. And unfortunately, they had an unexpected